heaven's sake, Mother, I'm on a break. I am on a break. I am allowed to have breaks. I am allowed to have a break, Mother. Just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to myself. Go. Ah, hello. Hello. How are you? I bet you're doing better than I am. I'm up for spring. I mean, look at me. I'm not bringing you a play this time. I'm not bringing you a play, as was suggested, that you all don't know anything about the Greeks or the classics. I'm giving you a crash course because it gives me 5 minutes away from my smother. Seriously. At least there's only about a month to go and then I can go home. Just doesn't understand. Doesn't understand. Anyway, so remember, before we start, there is our shop with books and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And there's a Redbubble shop, blah, 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 blah. And then like and subscribe and comment and share, or I'll make you spend time with my smother. I'll make you spend time with my smother. Yeah. Anyway, what we are doing is we are talking about books that are important for you to understand various different things about classical literature, the crash course, the most basic things you could possibly need. So I have a pile of books. I have a pile. Look. A pile. So let's start at the top with our pile. The first one on our pile is the Aeneid, Old Virgil. This one is, of course, Virgil's the Aeneid, the founding of Rome. Aeneas, the Trojan warrior, son of Aphrodite, leaves Troy, taking with him the refugees of Troy, and on various adventures founds Rome. You need to know this if you want to listen to Berlioz' Les Troyens. You need to know this. This is where you get the story of Dido. So you need this for Shakespeare. You need this if you want to see the burning of Troy. This is where Shakespeare gets Priam's, the death of Priam in Hamlet is this. Really important. It's a Roman text. It's a Latin text. It's by Virgil, who's like a big deal in Rome, much more conservative than Ovid, therefore didn't get exiled. Really, he's like Augustus's big propaganda poet. And this is his big propaganda piece about how great the Romans were. So, the Aeneid, really important one to look at. You're going to find references to the Aeneid all through literature. It's going to be everywhere. So, this one is the Robert Fagles translation. I have about 3 Robert Fagles translations. They're very, very good. So, the Aeneid is number 1. We're going through this in no particular order. So, there you go. Aeneid. Next up, is Sophocles. Now, Sophocles gives you Oedipus. You need this one to get Oedipus. This is not a good translation. This is a garbage translation. This was cheap. Don't get this one. But he is a Greek playwright. You need to, if you're looking at Greek plays, you need to understand that they are a thing that belongs in a social construct. They are not just in isolation. They're doing particular things, and they're telling stories that that the populace already know. So these might be the best known versions of them today, but these were very popular stories in their own time. People knew about King Oedipus. This is where we get the story of King Oedipus Rex today. He also has Antigone and Electra and Oedipus at Corinth. There are some others in there as well, but those are the big ones. Of course, Electra goes with Agamemnon in the whole Trojan thing. So Sophocles is another one that you really need to have in your armory, if only for Oedipus Rex, because it's important to know that one. That's why we did it as a play. Next one, Aeschylus. If you want to know the story of the Trojan Wars, you need Aeschylus, because Aeschylus is not about the war itself, it's about the aftermath of war. So this is the Orestelia trilogy. This is Agamemnon returning from the war and getting butchered like a hog. It is Electra calling on her brother Orestes to kill their mother, and it is the Furies coming at the bidding of Clytemnestra to plague her son for her murder. Really important part of that story. And this is a really important set of plays. Again, much like the Sophocles, not the only versions. There are other versions of these, but these ones are predominantly the ones that you will find being used. So, that one, the Orestelia trilogy. Okay, next up, we got the biggies. Next up we have the Iliad. Want to read Pope? Want to read Swift? You need this thing. You don't have this thing, they're not going to make a lot of sense. They reference them a lot. Pope did a translation, Dryden did a translation. You know who doesn't use this? Shakespeare. Shakespeare does not use this. Why? Because he really didn't have a translation. It wasn't really, it was very, very new, and it wasn't something that he seems to, you don't find a lot of references to this, to Homer's version of these stories. You'll find more Aeneas, the Aeneid. You'll find more the Aeneid. You will not find the Homeric versions of the Iliad. So when you see Achilles, if that appears in Shakespeare, it's a very different Achilles to the one that appears in Homer. This one is the Robert Fagel's translation. It's really good. Highly recommend this one. This is, of course, Sing Muse of the Rage of Achilles. Yes, Achilles, the violent, nasty little brute. Yeah, he really doesn't like it downstairs at all. Not at all. So, that's the Iliad, the story of Ilium, the story of Troy. Next one is the Odyssey. This is the story of Odysseus returning home from the wars. Again, this one Not something Shakespeare seems to have been using. In fact, if you look at, and before you go and say Torres and Cressida, he was using Chaucer, and Chaucer wasn't using this either. His Torres and Cressida is very, very, very Chaucerian. Why? Because Cressida doesn't exist in this. She's not Briseis. Cressida doesn't exist in this, in the Iliad or the Odyssey. He's not using these. You know who does use these? James Joyce. You cannot tackle Ulysses without this. You have to read this if you want to read Ulysses. You also need this for Pope and Swift. So if you want 18th century peoples, you want this. You want Ulysses, you want this. There are a lot of things that use this, not Shakespeare. Okay, if you want to know what Shakespeare was using, this one. This appears to have been Shakespeare's favourite little book, Ovid's Metamorphosis. Ovid's stories of the gods turning people and other things into other things. This is the book that gives you tons and tons and tons of things that Shakespeare uses. He will reference this thing over and over and over and over. And do you want to know where you find the story of, I think it's Philomena, who was assaulted by her sister's husband and then had her tongue cut out so she couldn't tell who had done it? It's in here, which Shakespeare repurposed into Titus Andronicus and then directly referenced. Yes. It's in here. Venus and Adonis, in here. These things are in here. This is a really big one. I don't know if this is the best translation. It's an older translation. Actually, no, it's not as... I don't think it's as old as I thought. It's not the Rio translation. This one is Mary Innes. I quite like this one. It's a prose translation, not a verse translation. But this one, you want to understand Shakespeare, you need this. You need this one. The other one, I don't have a copy. If you want to understand Shakespeare, is Plutarch's Lives. That's where you will get things like, you will get Antony and Cleopatra from there. He used that for Julius Caesar. He used it for Coriolanus. He used it for, I believe he used it for Pericles. He used it for a lot of his historical things. So you want Plutarch's Lives if you want to find out a lot of where Shakespeare got those things from. Now, I've only got 2 more to go. This one is Quintus Semiranis's The Fall of Troy. Now, this is what Chaucer actually had access to. And he had access to a thing that was called the Little Iliad, which has subsequently been lost. And these are the stories that the Middle Ages used instead of the Odyssey and the Iliad, because they didn't have the Odyssey and the Iliad. They had various bits and pieces of the story, but they didn't have the Homer. So that's why the medieval versions look so very different, because you barely find Troilus in Homer, but you will find Troilus in here. You will find Troilus in here. And as I said, Shakespeare was using Chaucer anyway. So Chaucer was using this. This is really quite specialized, only if you really want to find out about the Trojan War and be a bit completist, would you bother with this one. So you don't really need this one. And finally, the final thing that I would recommend is Apollodorus's The Library of Greek Myths. This is a collection of Greek myths all brought together. So especially where they're really, really obscure. Those strange little stories that you think, what on earth is that and where has that come from? Those are in here. So this does have variations on the Trojan Wars. So this is also a book that was available to the medieval world. So if you wonder why those stories look so strange in comparison to the stories that are in Homer, is because they're using entirely different sources. So that is my quick run through of things that you really need to look at if you really want to get into the classics. There are many, many other things that you could have a look at, but if you're reading the classics and you want things that you will, to find out things that other authors, later authors are referencing, those are the books that I would suggest. And even then, if you want to whittle that down to an even smaller number, I would say the Aeneid, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Metamorphosis are the 4 books that you have to have. The plays are nice, but those 4 books, those 4 big pieces are the ones you absolutely have to have. Okay, so that's me done. Remember, next time I see you, I will be out of these dreadful childish clothes that my mother makes me wear. I will be back home in my native blacks, and we will be doing Amadeus. So, until then, bye-bye. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.